So I finally got to see Barbie, the 2023 movie with Margot, Robbie, and Ryan Gosling. I had not gotten around to see it because I remember the week that it came out, I did go see Oppenheimer, but I seem to remember it being mad busy, and I was going to go see Barbie, but I just never got around to it. So I finally got around to seeing the film. And, going into the movie, I wasn't really sure what to expect. First of all, I knew that it was nominated for Best Picture, and that in and of itself already piques my interest because I tried to, and not purposely, but the movie was not spoiled for me. Going into the film, I thought it was going to be sort of like a Toy Story type of thing where or like an Indian in the cupboard type of thing where the Barbie doll comes to life, and that's not exactly what happened. The way they took this sort of fantasy story is that there's a separate world somewhere like called Barbie Land or Barbie World, and it's all the different types of Barbies that have ever been basically put out by Mattel live in this world of Barbie. And there's a ton of cameos and different people that appear to play the different variations of Barbie. But Barbie's apparently linked to a human in the real world. That is the world where Mattel exists, and it's very meta in that sense. And there was that in the movie. I had questions about this because I was wondering how the whole thing worked. And maybe I shouldn't be asking these questions because that wasn't really the theme of the film. It really didn't focus on how these things worked, but I was wondering, how did it work? Is every Barbie tied to one person, and who chooses to be that person or that doll or whatever? There's a lot of the reasons for Barbie to come to the real world. I understood them, but I think they needed to be explained a little bit more because for the sake of the film, I got it, but it didn't make sense to me when I sat and thought about the whole world, the bigger picture. But what I wanted to say going into the film was that I had been told a few different things about the movie. One thing I was told, obviously, is that the film was very woke. That seems to be what a lot of folks were saying. But then somebody else, a few other people told me it's not really woke. It's actually sort of making fun of woke and anti-woke, and I was like, okay, well, sure. And going into it, I expected it to have a few jokes here and there, like jokes about gender and things of that nature. What I didn't expect was how much of that actually became the story itself. The movie was written and directed by Greta Gerwig, and that's somebody who I know much more as an actor than as a director. I've seen her performances, but I've never seen her direct a film. But man, I was completely wrong about what this movie, what I thought, what my impressions were of this film before seeing it. I was very, very wrong. This movie, I thought for sure this was going to be a movie like a Pixar film where it's a kids movie. It's a movie for kids with a few grown-up jokes. You right, like a lot of the Pixar movies have. No, that is not what this is. This is not a movie for kids. And I'm saying that not because it has any kind of gratuitous violence, nudity, or anything like that, or even profanity. No, this film, the themes of this movie and the actual plot are very, very interwoven into politics. I'm watching this movie and I'm sitting there, and I watched it with a group of people. Some were guys, some were women. And when we watched it, one of the things I said was, I cannot imagine a 10-year-old girl in the movie theater wanting to just watch a Barbie movie and getting this. I don't see how a kid could really understand what they were talking about. I mean, I got it, of course, because I'm an adult, but there was a lot of talk about the patriarchy. There was a lot of talk about inequality of genders. There was a lot of that. The whole plot was interwoven into that because Ken's character arc sort of was built upon the fact that coming into the real world, he learns what patriarchy actually is and kind of becomes sort of brainwashed, by it. Now, the first of all, I want to say Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie did a great job as far as their performances go. Okay, I want to say that. As far as their performances go, they did a great job. So the question is, was this mean spirited? Because, like I've told you before, when it comes to woke and all, I don't care about that shit. I think that's a weak argument to make when it comes to criticizing a film, is it's politics, right? But going into it, there was a few things that I wanted to look. Again, was this mean spirited? And was this truly funny? Because this is a comedy. So as far as it being mean spirited, I'm a little bit torn on this, because part of me sees the message as it being that neither way is right. Patriarchy and matriarchy, like neither gender should have so much control. That seems to be the message of the film. But right now, we're living in a world where a woman is one of the two main nominees for the President of the United States. Same thing in 2016. So I'm not saying that that's a sign that things are changing, but there was a time in American history before I was born where that was, unheard of. You never thought that would even be a thing. So I think that was the message, but was it mean-spirited? I didn't feel the same way about this film as I felt about Ghostbusters 2016. That movie felt like it was an anti-man movie. And I didn't go into it, because I'm not one of those guys who comes on here and cries about SJW and woke. That's not me, man. Those things don't bother me as much as they do other people on here. And I think ultimately there's a lot of grifting, a lot of fake outrage, because it gets clicks. It's interesting though that Kate McKinnon was in Ghostbusters and in this film, and she was probably the funniest character in both. But there were a couple parts that maybe felt like they were sort of going in that direction. And what I mean is the direction of, okay, men are stupid, idiots. And I think that really resonated with the Will Ferrell character, right? That men are just a bunch of dumbasses. But the only characters in the movie that I felt were actually pretty dumb were Will Ferrell's character and even Ken. But Barbie was also very naive. They try to do a lot of fish out of water stuff. Ken just going into the whole patriarchy thing, and then going from being this sort of innocent guy who has a thing for Barbie into being, this sort of like dictator was very, very weird. Again, the film kind of caught me off guard because, again, this is not a movie for kids. Like, watching it, I don't get how a kid would understand any of this, right? So there was a tad bit of feminism in the film, but also the film tackled the effect of too much feminism. So there were aspects of the film that maybe felt it was going in that direction, but then ultimately it sort of tried to even itself out a bit, especially near the end. The thing is, the issue that I had with this film is that it wasn't funny. I mean, I laughed, I think, 2 times, one of them for a cameo. And it wasn't even like a big laugh. It was like an okay laugh. Like, to me, it just wasn't. And it's because while I understand this type of humor now way more as an adult than I did as a kid, it just wasn't funny. And as I'm watching the film, when the film ended, the first thing I thought of was, how did this movie get nominated for Best Picture? Because it's not that it's a bad movie. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think it's a horrible movie. In fact, the way it's made is kind of cool. Like, there's a lot of very, very ingenious special effects that were used to create the world of Barbie. A lot of creative set pieces. Like, there was, production-wise, it was good in here. And I can see why, the production side of things got nominated. But, dude, Godzilla Minus One moved me emotionally. and it didn't get nominated for Best Picture, and this did. And the only reason I can think of as to why this was nominated is because of the politics. I don't know if you've heard about this, but apparently now the Academy Award is creating these new rules where for a film to be nominated for Best Picture, it has to have like a diverse crew, and they're making all these rules up for diversity's sake, which to me, the best movies are the ones that should win the awards. And it's not about the color or gender of the crew. It's about how good of a job the crew does. And that might sound, some people might not like that, but that's what I always thought an award was, right? An award is for the best. The comedy just didn't land with me. And again, that's subjective. Comedies are very subjective. It didn't land with me. I thought they were trying a little too hard. But they were very literal about things. And I thought they were trying a bit too hard, and it wasn't really clever. See, this type of humor works, ironically enough, in the older episodes of The Simpsons. The Simpsons was able to talk about these types of topics like patriarchy, feminism, like the battle of the genders, or whatever you want to call it. The sort of that whole debate. The Simpsons used to be able to pull this off, and they did it in a very clever way. Same thing with South Park. They do it in very clever ways that are subtle to where you pick up on it, and it's actually clever and funny. With this film, they were too on the nose with everything they were doing. You know what I mean? And to me, humor, and this is, like I said, very subjective. Humor to me is usually something where it's clever, where there's a connection, but it's not visible until you use your brain a little tiny bit. And that's the kind of comedy I like. I saw somebody say that this movie is going to leave a bad impression on little girls who are fans of Barbie. And I disagree. I think little girls are going to be confused. Maybe the teenage or adult girls are going to understand all this. Maybe even some of the smarter, preteens. But this type of humor, I cannot imagine a movie like this coming out 20 years ago. Obviously, we live in a different world now, but it's something that definitely came out for the time, and Greta Gerwig wrote it for the time. At the same time, it wasn't funny to me, and I'm glad that I watched it. I'm just not sure if I'm ever going to watch it again. Just because it just didn't make me laugh. I wasn't enjoying myself, and waiting for the next joke. I was as I'm watching the movie, I'm trying to figure things out and kind of understanding the arcs. But near the end, it feels like the movie just falls apart because the scene where Ken loses his emotion and starts crying, and Barbie's kind of using him. At least they captured, at least they sort of showed some treachery, because, I've had treacherous exes in the past behave like this and use me. I'm sure a lot of guys have dealt with that. So there was some parts in here where it really did resonate, but it just didn't make me laugh. I didn't really enjoy myself. And that's me. That's my sense of humor. I watched The Naked Gun last week, the original one with Leslie Nielsen, and I laughed my ass off I don't know how many times. There was at least 3 times in that movie where I paused it because I couldn't stop laughing. Right? With this one, I don't know, man. It just didn't make me laugh. So that's ultimately what I gauge the movie on. I don't care about woke this, woke that. If the execution is good, fine. And the execution here, part of it was good, but the jokes didn't land with me. So those are my thoughts on 2023's Barbie. Feel free to leave yours in the comments. And let me know if you think I'm crazy. Did it make you laugh? Did I miss something? Because maybe I missed something. I don't know. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.